Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Awesome Sunday Show. Pat here, just doing a little solo episode. Just trying to recap as much of the Flash as possible. That way we're able to, catch up since the new season already started. So this episode is basically just going to be a quick rundown of as much of this season as possible that I could get in this episode. Starting with episode number 12, which is called Crazy for You. Villain is Peekaboo. Hartley, aka Pied Piper, tells Cisco that Ronnie merged with Dr. Martin Stein and the product of Project Firestorm, which is what that combination of Stein and Ronnie will go by. Barry's dad insinuates he knows Barry's the Flash, and then the episode ends with Gorilla Grodd attacking two workers in the sewers. Episode 13 is The Nuclear Man. The team tracks Ronnie down and is able to get him to come to the lab for testing. Cisco and Joe discover bloodstains from the night of Barry's mom's murder. They find out a future Barry was there the night of the murder, and the other sample of blood isn't Wells. Wells realizes that Ronnie and Stein's atoms are in conflict and will cause a nuclear explosion. So Wells reluctantly lets them use part of the tachyon device that he's using to charge his speed to stabilize and separate Ronnie and Stein. They still end up exploding, and General Eiling, you remember from the Plastique episode, sends a team to recover them. Episode 14, which is Fallout. Ronnie and Stein become separated. Joe informs Barry a future him was at the murder. Eiling reveals he knows Barry's the Flash. And he wants to capture Firestorm, both Ronnie and Dr. Stein. Wells gives him Dr. Stein, and then Ronnie's able to find him from their connected, basically, thought link. Then Firestorm ends up merging to stop Eiling, and then leaves to discover more about their powers. The episode ends with the Reverse Flash capturing Eiling, shows himself that he's Wells to Eiling, and then Wells lets Grodd take Eiling. Episode 15 is Out of Time, which is the first episode to feature Barry time traveling, which happens at the end of the episode. Mark Martin is the new weather wizard who looks for revenge for his brother's death, looks to kill Joe. Cisco discovers why the Reverse Flash was able to get away the night from the mid-season finale to get out of that field, and discovers that it's Wells. Wells reveals he's Eobard Thawne from the future. He's from the future. He killed Barry's mom because he wasn't able to kill Barry, and he's stranded in this present time, and he's making Barry stronger so he could use his powers to get back to his own time, which is the 25th century. He then kills Cisco, and then while trying to stop Martin, Barry runs so fast that he ends up time traveling to the previous day, which at the beginning of the episode he saw basically that current self that time traveled back through the Speed Force. And that's nothing new because the Flash often deals with time travel in the comics, and it's something that'll come up again and again. Episode 16 is called Rogue Time. Barry tells Wells he time traveled. Wells tells him not to do anything different from the day before, but Barry, of course, ends up doing that, and it ends up changing several situations that occur. Cisco gets kidnapped by Captain Cold and his sister Lisa. They force him to make a new cold gun and heat gun, then make a gun for Lisa, which turns things into gold. And then they force him to reveal the Flash's identity. Snart and Barry end up making a truce that Snart will not reveal Barry's identity. He won't kill innocent people as long as Barry doesn't put him in the particle accelerator prison. And then Reverse Flash kills a reporter who was investigating Wells and had him linked to the murder of Simon Stagg from way back in the beginning of this season. And then Barry believes Joe is right about Wells. The next episode 17, is Tricksters, which was a pretty big deal because Mark Hamill came back and he reprised his role from the 90s as the original Trickster from the original 90s series of The Flash, which John Wesley Shipp was the Flash. A new Trickster is causing havoc and breaks Hamill out of jail. Hamill ends up, they go through torturing some people in the city, and Hamill traps a bomb on Barry that will blow up unless he keeps running. Wells tells Barry how to phase through matter, which ends up removing the bomb. There's a Star Wars reference when Hamill tells the new Trickster that he's his father. The writers put that in intentionally as a joke. Barry reveals his identity to Eddie so that they can protect Iris from investigating Wells and putting her in danger. Barry finally realizes and accepts Wells as the Reverse Flash. Then the episode ends with a flashback scenes to the night of Mrs. Allen's murder, which shows the Reverse Flash running from the house and ends up losing his speed and basically just falling to the ground. Gideon tells him that going back in time drained his powers, and then he pulls off the mask and reveals Airbard's true face, which is not Wells' appearance. So it's not Tom Cavanaugh that really is Airbard Thawne, we see. He then stalks and captures the real Wells and tells him that the particle accelerator isn't built until 2020. He then kills Wells and steals his appearance and identity so that he could build it sooner using some sort of futuristic device. Episode 18 is the All-Star Team-Up, which features Ray Palmer and Felicity coming to Star Labs to improve Ray's atom suit. The main villain of this episode is Brie Larvin, who uses mechanical beasts to kill people at Mercury Labs as a revenge for being fired. With the help of Felicity and Ray, they're able to defeat her. Barry tells Cisco and Caitlin Wells is Reverse Flash. Caitlin is not having any of it, is really pissed that they would even suggest that. Cisco tells them that he's having dreams of Wells killing him, and that the events that happened, which are really the events that happened in the original timeline. So he's basically, we'll be able to figure out why he's able to do that later, but he's basically recalling those events from the original timeline from before Barry time traveled back that previous day. He's able to retain that memory, but it appears to him as dreams. So episode 19 is Who is Harrison Wells? The villain of this is Hannibal Bates, whose nickname is the Chameleon. He's basically able to steal the form of anybody he touches. This episode we get another mini crossover with Cisco and Joe going to Starling City and meeting up with Captain Lance to investigate the scene of the accident where Wells' wife died, which is where Airbard Thawne ended up stealing his form, basically. They're able to find Wells' body and do some tests and confirm that it's really Harrison Wells, which ends up leading Caitlin to believe that the Wells they know is not the real Wells. Barry, Caitlin, and Cisco end up locating the secret room, basically, of Airbard Thawne, and they find both the Reverse Flash's costume and a newspaper article from the future that we keep seeing from 2024 concerning the Flash vanishing during a crisis. Then episode 20, which is the Trap. Barry learns about his battle with the Reverse Flash in the future, as well as key moments from his life that include marrying Iris, promotion at the CCPD, and that he actually ended up creating Gideon, and they start to tease that he's one of the founding members of the Justice League, but they don't say that for obvious reasons. They're not really able to touch upon that. Then the team regroups at Barry's house, where he goes over his plan to convince Wells to confess to killing his mother. Cisco retries creating that containment field from the mid-season finale to protect himself from Wells, while Caitlin and the rest of them capture Wells' confession. The trap fails, and then Joe shoots Wells before he can kill Cisco, but it's revealed while he's dying that it was actually Hannibal Bates. Wells then calls a team, revealing that he was always aware of their actions because he had them under constant surveillance, which is seen. He has cameras basically set up in every part of the main characters' lives, every room they visit, everything of the sort. Wells goes after Iris and Eddie, but Barry arrives, forcing Wells just to kidnap Eddie. Wells reveals to Eddie that he's really Eddie's future relative, and he reveals that Iris ends up marrying Barry, which leads to Eddie being distraught. And then flashbacks show that the aftermath of Barry being struck by lightning, and Wells offering Joe to save Barry's life. Episode 21, Grodd Lives. Barry goes all over the city looking for Eddie, but ends up having to stop a robbery at the Gold Reserve. And then Barry confronts the thief, and they're both disoriented by an unknown psychological attack, which ends up being Gorilla Grodd. Iris ends up going to Star Labs and confronting Barry about being the Flash, which she was able to figure out by in the previous episode when Barry takes her hand, promising he's going to get Eddie. There's a spark of electricity between them, which a literal spark of electricity, not like a romantic one. That happened when Iris was holding Barry's hand after he was in the coma, which she somehow able to figure out was Barry from such a small thing. Barry's able to stop the thief, which turns out to be General Eiling, who's being mind controlled by Grodd. So Barry, Joe, and Cisco end up going into the sewers to look for Grodd. And they realize he's getting smarter and larger, and during the attack, Barry's knocked unconscious, and Joe's kidnapped by Grodd. Cisco and Caitlin build Barry a device that will prevent Grodd from attacking him, and it works, but Grodd's still able to beat him up and just damage the device. Barry's able to fight off Grodd's psychic attack, and then ends up tricking him into jumping in front of an oncoming train. And then, in the secret location that he's keeping Eddie, Wells is working on a device that will allow him to return to his own time. Episode 22, which is Rogue Air. Cisco discovers that Wells has been supercharging his speed in the wheelchair he sits, which is why he's so much faster than Barry. The particle accelerator is then activated, and they realize that Wells has been at Star Labs the entire time, and he repaired the accelerator. They're finally able to find Eddie. Eddie tells Iris he knows of her future and how she's supposed to marry Barry, and ends the relationship. The team gets worried that the metahumans imprisoned inside the particle accelerator will be killed when it reaches the full power, so the team decides to relocate them to an Argus prison on Lian Yu, which is where Oliver has been keeping certain criminals such as Captain Boomerang and Deathstroke. Barry's really desperate for help, so he ends up going to Leonard Snart. And Snart agrees to help him only after Barry erases every single file in every database about Snart and his criminal record. So Snart and his sister end up helping them transport the metahumans, but Snart ends up sabotaging it, and the metahumans escape, with Snart's reasoning being now they all owe him one. Wells arrives back at the lab just as the accelerator fully charges. Barry, Firestorm, and Oliver end up meeting up outside the lab to fight Wells, and they're finally able to basically knock Wells unconscious after Oliver stops him with a nanite injection that disables his speed. And then the season finale, fast enough, basically everything comes to an end, and we just find out everything that happens and why everything has happened. So Barry visits Wells, where Wells describes their relationship in the future, why he killed Barry's mother, and why he ultimately had to help Barry become the Flash. Wells also makes a proposal to Barry, requesting that he help create a wormhole where Wells can return to his time in the 25th century, while also allowing Barry to go back in time to save his mother, giving them both what they want. Barry and the team are conflicted, since this could alter the timeline in an undeterminable way, which they really can't prepare for whatever happens as a result. Barry ends up deciding to go through with it, so Wells informs him of how it's possible. Basically, they need to turn on the particle accelerator, and then Barry has to reach a speed of Mach 2 and collide with the hydrogen particle that's injected into it to create a wormhole, and that Barry will have less than 2 minutes to change the past, or the wormhole will create a black hole that could destroy the world. So then Ronnie and Caitlin ended up getting married finally. After all this time that they discovered Ronnie was alive. Barry ends up successfully traveling back in time. He ends up in his room on the night of the murder, and as he goes out to save his mother while hearing of the conflict, a future version of himself tells him not to save their mother, which they don't show yet of why this happened, but in the comics, as a result of Barry saving his mother, it set off the events of Flashpoint, which basically creates an alternate timeline in which the world is in shambles, which I'll describe in a different episode, but that's probably why he did it. I mean, we won't find out about that for a while. So after future Barry and Wells leave the scene, Barry goes and talks to his mom, reveals who he is, and that he's safe in the future, and then she ends up dying. And that was one of the most heart-wrenching scenes they've shown in the series, and one of the saddest I've ever seen on a comic book show. But it was so well done. I give a lot of kudos to that because it was an excellent scene, very sad. Barry ends up running back through the wormhole and stops Wells from returning home, which pisses off Wells, and they get into a fight, and the team's trying to shut down the wormhole before it destabilizes and swallows everything up. Wells ends up beating up Barry and is about to kill him, but out of nowhere, Eddie shoots himself in the heart, causing himself and Wells to die. And while they're both dying, Wells is reverted back into Airbud to be erased from existence. And while he's doing that, he says to Barry, how will you ever get along without me, since I've been controlling your life for so long? And then, even though the wormhole was shut down, Wells being erased, or Airbud being erased from existence, ends up reopening the wormhole, and the team's unable to prevent it from becoming a black hole, and it becomes a giant singularity floating over the city. And then Barry ends up running into it in an effort to stop it, much like he did the tornado from episode 1. it was a, and that was the season finale, and that's how that episode and the season ends, is on a cliffhanger, and it was one of the best episodes they've ever shot, one of the best episodes I've ever seen, not only in a comic book show, but in any show, especially for a season finale. So that's all worth watching. It's just, clearly a brief recap of what's important over the end of the season, because, we want to catch up and get up to the current season, which just started last Tuesday, and episode 2 of the new season will happen this Tuesday. All the episodes of season 1 of The Flash are available on Netflix now, and I highly recommend watching all of them or rewatching them if you already have. And then Connor and I will get into reviewing and recapping the new episodes very, very soon, starting with this week. So thanks for listening and bearing with me through this. I know I don't my voice sounds kind of monotonous and robotic, but sorry about that. But just wanted to get this done so we're able to catch up. All right, guys, thanks for listening. Bye.